Hey everyone. Sorry. I know this was unreasonably late. I know I'm sorry. And I know I'm being rude by looking at my phone at the same time right now, too. Several things came up at once. I'm trying to rap at the same time while also starting stream at not the worst time. I apologize. Uh, yeah. Well, we got a good cliffhanger to the chapter, though, right? Good cliffhanger to the chapter. Hold on. Hold on. Give me, give me 1 second. Um, all right. All right. Yeah, I know late. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Mork, etc. Joel with a is it Joel? Joey217 says Morch, have you slept since last stream? Um for people who don't know, last stream I was very, very sleepy. I was extremely sleep deprived. That was the most sleep deprived you all would ever have seen me ever, basically. Um uh but that is over now. I'm not sleep deprived. I got some good sleep the last couple nights, and I'm feeling good. And 1 second. All right. Yeah. Okay. Hazard and Gibson says, "Was this actually a good cliffhanger?" I don't know. Most likely Shaka is not dead, but that's the fun of Bugas says no one asked. That is factually not true. I was literally asked. That's what I was responding to a comment that asked me. Joey217. Can you tell this guy? Can you tell Bugas? All right. Riz Fruits says this chapter made the traitor too obvious. Who? Who's the traitor? How is it so obvious? How come I don't know who the traitor is, but apparently it's very obvious? I think at this point the two options, right? We got I still like the Seraphim pick. I think the Seraphim pick is still a good pick. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 100, please. Let's get it to 100. I like the Seraphim pick. I think that's a good pick. And I think that the Punk Records being sentient and controlling bodies individually is also a good pick. John Ross says Shaka is going to replace his head like Atlas's face. Yeah, at the end of the day, is Shaka dead? Does Oda have it in him to kill off 1/7? No, not even 1/7, because we can assume the Stella body is most of Vegapunk's consciousness, and then Punk Records also. Can we believe that Oda might have killed off 1/10, 5-10% of a man's consciousness? Right? Because that's what Shaka is. He's a percentage of Vegapunk's consciousness. Could we believe that a part of Vegapunk, 5 to 10% probably, is now dead, and that Oda killed off that 10% of a man in cold blood? I'm gonna run a poll. Astro Peasy says, did anyone else notice Sanji switch his eyebrows? Yes, and I'm pretty interested in seeing that, because how that goes. Just because I like the fact that Sanji now has a visual cue for when he's basically going all out. Utrecht says, like the stream is the culprit. Let me run a poll. Alright. Is Shaka permanently dead? Question. Yes. No. Let's see what you guys think. Is that the last we saw of Shaka? Shaka is as dead as Pell. Brandon King says the traitor is S Flamingo killing his father, Vegapunk with a gun, just like Dofi did with his dad. I love that, Brandon King. I love that parallel. I love that little parallel. That would actually be such a cool parallel. Doflamingo doing the same thing to Vega, because it's the same thing, right? Killing his father twice, turning against his father twice. Love it. Great point. Alright, so 80% of people think that Shaka is not dead. I think that that's about a fair ballpark. I don't know. It's also just like, even if Shaka is dead, how many of us would care that much? I hope that Oda is willing to kill off some of these Vegapunks, because I've said this so many times before. I love the murder mystery aspect of what we've got right now. That's really fun to me, at least just figuring out who did it, right? So I love the murder mystery aspect, but at the same time, if Oda can't kill anybody, it's like these Vegapunk clones exist. So if you can't kill the clones, right, it's just like this is the closest we could get to a murder mystery in One Piece, because Oda obviously is never going to kill off real characters. So it feels as though these Vegapunk, satellites, they're the closest thing we could get to having disposable characters that you could kill off. So please, if that's doable, please let it happen. That's all I could say. And Shaka would be probably the most significant to kill off, so Shaka's a good pick for sure. Shaka's the most significant. I think Lilith is right there next. Lilith is right after him, and then after that, I think I don't give a shit. Also, can we talk about something really big? The biggest development from this chapter? This is crazy. I have a bigger theory, and this is a theory that can't ever make it to... I'm never going to put this in video format, but I have this theory, and I don't know if anybody is going to, I don't know if you guys will believe it, but I think it's a good theory. I don't think Oda is writing this arc. At the very least, I don't think Oda is drawing this arc. And the reason I say that is, okay, this is a legitimate theory, all right? Because we all know Oda. We've read this manga for like 1,000-something chapters. Throughout all of One Piece, if you combine all of the prior arcs before this, and then compare it to this arc, which is only like 15, 17 chapters, right? There are more ass shots in this singular Egghead Island arc in the last 17 chapters than there have been in the entire 1,050 chapters before this. Right? We all know Oda. He just likes drawing tits. That's all he's interested in. He's just a boob man. He does not, think about it. Has this ever happened before? Right? 17 chapters in the span of this one chapter, I would argue, just this chapter. There have been more ass shots in this chapter alone. I wasn't sure if it was a serious trend before this chapter. I was like, okay, it's happening more in Egghead Island. I don't like the outfits that people are being made to wear in Egghead Island. Nami, Robin, etc. They're clearly out of Oda's usual interest zone. But with this chapter, I'm just like, no, this is something different. It's not... Oda might be writing it, but there's someone else drawing it. It's some assistant. Oda hit puberty. I'm just like, yeah, why does this... Oda's how many years old, right? Do your preferences change when you're that old, right? Did he suddenly just have a realization? What happened? McDonald's, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Nicholas Sealstern says, "Hey Morge, I've been busy for a while, so I wasn't able to catch the last few live streams, but I was fudging right. S-Hog does have the dice fruit. Yeah, you were right. I think that that came up a while back. Sorry you didn't you didn't get to capitalize it right away. Capitalize it on it right away. All of you who have doubted me are the fools now. Ha. Yes, we are the fools. We did not realize that it would be that. Yeah, Oda's finally cultured. I don't know. He's 47. He's 47 years old, right? What happened? How did what? I just don't think that happens that late in life. He's had so many years to get to draw this manga, and all of a sudden he's like, wait a second. What if I did some stuff below the waist? I just don't get it. Viran says he changed editors. Wait a sec. He did change editors, didn't he? Hold on. Wait. One Piece editor. I think you cracked it. Editor change? Didn't he change editors recently? Yes. No. Because the change was in February 2023. Egghead Island's been going on longer than that. This has been a trend for longer than that. Nice try. You didn't figure out anything. Goomba Boomba, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 5 months. If it's S Flamingo, then Stella would have recognized him since he explicitly told Shaka, who's the guy you brought, kind of hoping it's the Blackbeard Pirates, Shiryu. It's tricky because it's kind of like, okay, is he saying that because it's dark, he couldn't see, so he saw a silhouette? I don't know. It's unclear how much of the person that how much of that mysterious person number 2 he got to see. Keenan, thanks. Getting closer to Kizaru fight has to be the worst character to fight in One Piece. You know how when you look at a light bulb... Okay, you're saying in that sense. I was just like, worst character... I thought he'd be one of the coolest characters to get to see fight. You know how when you look at a light bulb, you see the after image for a little bit? Now imagine fighting Kizaru. That's true. Keenan, good point, because people don't talk about that much. Anytime people talk about, oh, Kizaru is so difficult to fight, everybody's talking about the speed, right? It's just fucking bright. Because if you remember, go back to just, guys, let's get the likes up to 200. Let me show you guys something. I feel like it'd be somewhere around 275, something like that. No, that's too late. 260 something. Let me answer something in the meanwhile. He changed editors this year, right? But the Egghead Island ass shots have been going on for a while longer. I think. I might be wrong. Isaac Safe says, if the chapter title is not only referring to Zoro the Scene, the traitor may be Bonnie. She did hate the world government and Vegapunk and is familiar with Egghead. But Bonnie was factually occupied with the Kuma memories while other things were going on. So technically we haven't seen her, I think, in a couple of chapters, but they were, I think, during the the Seraphim Doflamingo video that I did, when I made that video, I went through and I crossed off the candidates that we knew couldn't be doing it because they were all occupied doing other things. So Stussy couldn't be doing it because she was occupied fighting Lucci and Kaku at the same time as Vegapunk went disappearing. Bonnie, she was occupied with the Kuma memories while the cameras and stuff were being taken out. There's generally, I think, very few logical options that are left at this point in time. Very, very few. Also, at this point, okay, never mind. Okay, yeah, let me show you guys this on the Kizaru note. McDonald's, thanks for the $2. Might have missed that. McDonald's, thanks again. Do you think it would make sense for Oda to start killing satellites to lessen the amount of characters moving forward? I would love for him to do it. I would really, really, really love for him to do it. I think it would just be better for the story in literally every way because you add some level of stakes and tension because some characters are technically being killed off, even if they're just aspects of one main character's consciousness or personality, right? So on the one hand, you're adding some level of stakes and tension, and on the other hand, you're narrowing down the number of extraneous, superfluous characters that you don't really need, right? I think we're solid. If we exited this arc with just Vegapunk, Bonnie, and the Straw Hats, I think that's exactly how many characters we would need for things to be interesting moving forward without being overloaded, you know? So let me show you guys something with regards to fighting Kizaru. People don't talk about this. And let's get the stream likes to 200, alright, as I show you this amazing preview of what Zoro versus Kizaru might look like, right? Might not be Zoro versus Kizaru, but I'm just saying Zoro's gonna have a fucking hard time fighting Kizaru, because I totally forgot about this. So do you guys remember this guy? His name was Brahm. People always remember the Zoro versus Ohm fight in, Skypiea was actually a cool little arc for Zoro. I think people forget. It was actually, Skypiea, it had very little for Zoro in terms of character or anything like that, obviously. So it's easy to forget. But I think it's the only arc as far as I can recall. I think it's the only arc as far as I can recall that has an actual progression plotline for Zoro as a swordsman from start to finish. I think you could argue Wano does as well, because Wano has Zoro picking up Enma earlier in the arc, and then he has to master it during the King fight. And there's bits of him having to deal with Enma's bullshit during Kaido's fight, right? The fight on the rooftop. So I think Wano, you could argue that as well, but Skypiea had it in a very low-key way, where he had this initial fight. You guys don't remember? He had this initial fight where he was having a lot of trouble with this guy, Brahm. Why? Because Brahm used guns and could run around, and most importantly, Brahm had flashlights or something like that. The guns, they were wait, it's a flash gun. That's what it was called. It's a flash gun. Oh, I like this gag too. Zoro pulls out the goggles and is like, "It's over. Your flash gun is powerless against me now. You should holster." I like this moment quite a bit because it's playing into the, he's trying to hit him with the shonen logic, right? You come out and you're like, your special technique's been solved. I've countered it perfectly. And they're like, "All right, we'll prove it." He's like, "Fuck." Called my bluff. So anyway, flash gun. Zoro has a lot of fucking trouble with the flash gun. I don't know if you guys remember. It's a really big problem for him throughout this fight. It's not a long fight. In the anime, I watched this arc first in the anime, so the anime drags it out for, I think, a full episode. But, yeah, that's just a funny thing that, Kizaru, his light attacks being a pain to actually keep up with just visually is not something that's talked about. Because if a little flash gun is doing this much, imagine what a pain Kizaru's attacks, like, actually fighting him must be. Anyway, so the little progression that Zoro has is, we get to see him initially testing out the long-ranged attack first, right? So the cannon. So we get to see an example of the long-ranged attack once, right, early on. And it's a little preview of basically Zoro has a lot of trouble in the Skypiea arc with dealing with what do you call, the tricks and stuff like that characters pull out in the Skypiea arc. That was a small trend throughout Skypiea, in that a lot of the Skypieans' fighting styles was just a weirdly tricky matchup for the One Piece from the Blue Sea characters, right? From initially they don't understand how the dials work and things like that, then mantra and things like that. So Zoro actually in the Skypiea arc, he kind of has the simplest solutions to these situations because he figures out, like, it's a good progression for him to just start using long range attacks, which gets around a lot of the bullshit that the Skypiean stuff use, right? So first we get to see him using the 36-pound cannon. Then over the course of it, we get to see him using, obviously against Ohm, the big boy, we get to see him using 120-pound cannon, right? 36, 72. Is it 128-pound cannon? I'm crazy. I don't know. I think it's 128-pound cannon, right? Right? 108. I don't know why I'm thinking 120. 108-pound cannon. I was like, I know there's something wrong there. 120 was his bounty after Enies Lobby. Maybe that's why. Just, whatever. Number association. Anyway, but low-key, Kizaru's a tricky matchup, right? For anybody, I think. If Oda decides to write anything around, Kizaru actually having difficult to deal with light attacks, but I doubt that that'll actually be an issue. Although you could close your eyes and just use observation hockey. Anyway. Back to the chapter. John Ross says Kuma's backstory is going to end with the Celestial Dragons showing him a note that says, "The game." That's why Vegapunk is protecting Bonnie from it. A note that says "the game." I'm so confused. Kuma's backstory is going to end with the Celestial Dragons showing him a note that says "the game." What does that mean? Am I stupid? What does that mean? Does anyone know what that means? What does it mean? What's the game? That's why Vegapunk is protecting Bonnie from it. I don't get it. Stride Shaco says, is the Katak sound at the end significant? I think the last time that was shown was with Imu. Also, why is the intruder/traitor keeping Vegapunk alive? I am not the person, unfortunately, to ask about the Katak sound effect because I don't understand, the Japanese, onomatopoeia. Or the sound effects and stuff like that. I don't know what they use when necessarily, so I don't know what Katak is supposed to mean in that context, personally. Ali H, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 4 months. Yo Morge, everyone says they see Luffy dying and a story, but don't talk about any evidence other than parallels to Roger. Is there anything else? Hashtag it's Morgan time. Yes, so the most damning panel. Oh my god, yeah, that's what you mean, the game. Dude, that's so, okay. Eric Reed says band kid humor. That's exactly what it is. This is just, there's some things that are so dumb they're funny, and then there's some things that are just not even, it's just cringe. It's cringe at this point, dude. No, this is just so dumb. So dumb. Alright. You lost the game. It's genuinely middle school humor, and it got old in middle school. From what I remember, it's literally middle school humor, but it got old in middle school. It's on the same tier as Chuck Norris jokes. I guess the kids these days don't even do Chuck Norris jokes, right? That was a product of its time. But that's basically, this is, come on, man. What was the question before this? Okay, the parallels to Roger. Yeah, so the biggest thing that I would point to, so I have a whole video on it, which is that Luffy dies at the end, right? So I don't recall every point throughout it, and I don't say just parallels to Roger, but I think the most damning piece that I could say off the top of my head is this. In Udon, I think right before the Big Mom scene, so around the time of Yasuo's death, somewhere between Yasuo's death and the Big Mom arrival and everything in Udon, Luffy's having a really serious heated argument with Queen. And Queen saying, you're going to die here and everything like that. And Luffy loudly proclaims that I'm the one who's going to get to decide where I die or when I die or something like that. The quote is something along those lines. I'm the one who's going to decide where I die or when I die. So either way, basically, it's, what do you call? Yeah, either way, it's, you could say when I die, where I die. I forget exactly what the panel is. It might take me a minute to look it up. Don't want to, that section of the story is a little hazy for me. I could try looking it up. But either way, that sound, like the way it was portrayed, the style in which Luffy proclaimed it, it seemed to me as though that's something that seems a little significant. And I wouldn't say anything about that if it was just on its own, but it's on top of all of the other aspects of why people believe that Luffy might die. With Roger parallels, etc. included, the idea of Loguetown being the journey of beginning, like the point of beginning and end, with One Piece beginning at chapter 100 as they exit Loguetown, it kind of fits that, they would get back to it at the close of the story. I don't know. John Ross says, embrace the middle school cringe, Morge. This is just what the chat is. I guess I can't do it. There's nothing to be said. Remix King says, hey Morge, since you had extra time to read during the break week, how was your Pokemon Adventures reading? It is going very, very, very well. My favorite character is now Blue. And Blue is... Hold on. And Titania Dragon, I see I missed you. Let me get to you in a second. Hold on. My favorite character is... Actually, I think it is Blue. And... Blue is Blue is the rival. I like the rival character Blue, who is the rival to Red. And I like the fact that Blue is Oak's grandson. And I like when Red when my favorite character Blue arrives at Saffron City with Red and Green to fight the Team Rocket admins, who are, of course, they're not Jesse, James, and Meowth. They're actually Koga, Lieutenant Surge, and Sabrina, which is why I like them. And I loved, my favorite part was when the Red, Green, and Blue, I like the names too. I like when the names are based on simple things like colors and stuff like that. I like when Red, Green, and Blue work together to defeat and split the bird apart. The bird, of course, being Zap Molkuno, which is apparently a fusion, obviously a fusion of 3 legendary birds fused together. And that was my favorite. That was where I stopped reading. That was my favorite part. It's a great series. Great series. I'm glad that it won the poll, and I'm glad that I have to read it. So, besides that, Titanium Dragon asked, Lunarian's firepower are similar to how Akainu's fruit works. Remember when Marco and Vista hit him with Haki and it did nothing? I don't know if there's a parallel there, because, I mean, obviously the magma thing is a parallel in terms of, like, the flames are like magma, but why would Akainu, like, why would magma, I don't think it's a product of the way magma works. I feel like it's more so a product of the way that just Lunarian DNA works, right? So, because it just wouldn't make sense that Akainu not... My interpretation was that Akainu wasn't hurt by Marco and Vista for the same reason that Aokiji wasn't hurt when Whitebeard tried to stab him with his spear, and the same reason why Kizaru wasn't hurt a couple times, I think, because the admirals, as we understand, I thought it was explained with Katakuri, which is that with really good observation Haki, you can just move your body in advance to avoid being hurt by Haki users, which is why Akainu wasn't hurt, but he commented that it's annoying that Haki users are trying to attack him because he has to adjust to it, right? So that was my interpretation, because it's the same way that we saw admirals showing instances of advanced Haki. They used advanced armament Haki to stop Whitebeard's attack and things like that, right? So it stands to reason that they probably used advanced observation Haki as well. I do think at the end of the day, Blue is the girl, fake. Okay, well, I knew that. I don't see. Okay, hold on. No, Blue's. No, Blue is Oak's own grandson. It's. What are you talking about? No, Blue. I don't even know why I was trying to humor your argument that Blue is a girl. Blue's full name is Blue Oak, and he's a trader. He's a trainer who has a Charmander, who evolves it into a Charizard. If his name's Blue, wouldn't he have a Squirtle? And wouldn't he evolve it into a Blastoise? Truly a great series. The Lunarian DNA situation, I have some questions, or the Lunarian invulnerability situation, I have a lot of questions about that. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 300. Let's get it to 300. Ramen State says, Mob, will you be making any Pokemon Adventures content on Manga Morge? Also, I bought multiple volumes because of your chat. Oh, there'll be some... I'm excited that you bought multiple volumes. Yeah, just hang in there, man. Maybe don't keep buying the volumes necessarily if you're looking out for some Manga Morge content. I think if you personally enjoyed the series quite a bit, then of your own volition, please go ahead and buy more volumes. But you know, that Manga Morge content. Let's see who knows what the future holds. Remix King says, Do you remember which Pokemon Red had first? Yes, of course. Of course. It's a Bulbasaur. Even though it should be a fucking Charmander because his name's Red, but it's obviously a Bulbasaur. Who the fuck wrote that? Why can't they even get this right? Why is Red's first Pokemon a Bulbasaur, and Blue's first Pokemon is a Charmander, and let me guess, Green's first Pokemon is a fucking Squirtle? What the fuck? Why? I don't get it. I don't get it. What? Can someone explain this? Why is... I think I could write if you gave me Pokemon Adventures and you said, Morge, write a Pokemon series from start. I don't know how good the rest of the series is. Maybe it's phenomenal. Maybe the author fixes clear colorblind issues past a certain point and his, type classifications past a certain point. But all I know is that if I was tasked to start writing a Pokemon series, and the 3 characters I was given to start with are Red, Blue, and Green, I would fucking give them Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. And I think that would be the first, most objectively correct decision that you could possibly make to start this story. I don't know. Miguel B says subverted expectations. Is this what we call subverted expectations at this point? Never mind. Maybe I'm not a genius the way that who's the author? The author is okay. I'm not the genius that Hidenori Kusaka is. I couldn't think to color swap the starters. Brilliantly subvert expectations. Is this what we call subverting expectations at this point? Is this where the bar is? Oh, I'm gonna name him Red. And then, to start with, I'll give him a Pokemon that's fucking green. And then I'll give the green one a blue one. And then a blue one a red one. And it'll fucking blow their minds. Andrew Anderson says, did you get to the murder mystery arc in Pokemon Adventures yet? Oh, it has a murder mystery arc? Maybe I should read it. Sounds fun. Gotham Sajith, thanks for being a Yonka tier member for 2 months. Subverting expectations, ? Is this... I don't know what subverting expectations means anymore. I don't get it. All right. The Sanji eyebrow thing. Okay, the 2 things I wanted to talk about was the Sanji eyebrow thing and the Lunarian... Okay, the Lunarians not being able to be damaged thing. Okay, let's talk about the Lunarians thing first. First question I have for you all. With the Lunarians not being able to be damaged, do you feel it's more so because Luffy and Zoro are not using Advanced Conqueror's Haki yet? Or do you think that that's not going to make a difference? Because this is also changing, it makes the King fight almost really strange to me. Because people pointed out to me, I said before, and it was my mistake apparently, which was that once Zoro figured out Advanced Conqueror's Haki, he was able to damage King, who was a Lunarian, right? And that was the key. And then people pointed out that no, it was Zoro realizing the flame situation, right? And I assumed that it was a bit of a combination of both. I didn't, I guess, go back and read closely enough in that, yeah, if you go back and look at the fight, I'm pretty sure Zoro doesn't hit him with the, like, he has to, like, the flames, how do I explain this? The way it was portrayed, it felt like the real click moment that suddenly allowed Zoro to start hurting King was the Advanced Conquerors Haki, right? So we had a full chapter of Zoro getting bullied by King, and Zoro eventually working his way to be able to use Advanced Conquerors Haki. That was the climactic moment that the chapter finished with, and then the next chapter opens with Zoro having injured King, right? And it feels, when reading it, it feels like the breakthrough was that Zoro's Advanced Conquerors Haki was what really managed to hurt King, right? That's kind of how the flow of that whole sequence of events seemed, right? From there, the fight just continues on. It picks up. They battle back and forth and everything like that. And, yeah, basically the technic, like, Zoro makes a comment that, I've realized that, you know, I see now with the flame situation, etc. He makes a comment regarding, like, that's when I can hurt you and everything like that, but I had assumed that he had already been able to land a hit, you know, even with the flames on, right? I think I'm not making sense, but basically it felt to me like the big thing being highlighted about Zoro now being able to damage King was Zoro having Advanced Conquerors Haki, right? Zoro did also make a comment about, you know, when the flames go out, that's when I'm able to hurt you and everything like that, but I didn't realize that it was exclusively that, and that if Zoro didn't figure that out, then he'd be fucked. Because the interesting thing is, that was the main problem that he was dealing with up till now, which was, I can't hurt you, right? Then the big breakthrough that the fight focused on was Advanced Conquerors Haki, and then the smaller thing that it slipped in was, oh, and when the flames are out, that's when you're vulnerable. It felt a little strange. It feels a little strange in retrospect that Advanced Conquerors Haki wasn't even the most important part of the fight. It was this realization, this click moment that Zoro had regarding the flames. It does make me look at the fight a little differently because I'm like, okay, well, the Advanced Conquerors Haki part is almost secondary in terms of importance to this realization part, and I wish that more time was spent on Zoro, like, the flame trick being realized, because it's like, how important was the Advanced Conquerors Haki in the end anyway in that case? The bigger thing is, why did King just not have the flames on his back then? What's the benefit to taking the flames off? Like, is it big enough? You know? If you're basically invincible, why just take it off? Ray Uchiha says, watch Pokemon Red, the movie on YouTube. I don't know about that one. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 300. Elisha Cullen says the sound of the footsteps after Shaka is shot are the same footsteps of Imu in chapter 906, Katok Katok. But the thing is that, Mr. Crescent saying, bro, Imu being the murderer would be insane. Yeah, but the thing is that with Im, it just feels so random here. I mean, I guess it'd be cool. It'd be so fucking random. It would be cool. It would just be so insanely insane. Like, random doesn't even... It would be the biggest plot twist I think we could ever have imagined for this arc. And probably the biggest plot twist in One Piece in a long ass time. If Im's just on this island. But at the same time, it's just... I don't know enough about Japanese stuff with... No, I get this. No, people are saying more just not reading, speed, defense versus offense. I get it. But I'm saying that if Zoro literally can't hurt him, right? When the flame... There's no incentive to keep the flame not on his back if Zoro literally can't hurt him. Think back to the Mr. One fight, right? The issue was... yeah, the offense was really good. The offense was a big part of it. But if Zoro literally can't do damage, right? Then why would you, especially considering it's established that Advanced Conquerors Haki is actively draining Zoro as he uses it, right? There's no incentive for King to just take the flame off his back to start going all out on offense. That's assuming that Zoro literally can't hurt him when he has the flame on his back, right? You guys get what I'm saying? Basically, it's like, if you're just a tank straight up and you can't be hurt, yes, you could switch up to go on the offense more, but not if that makes you lose, and definitely not if the other person is actually actively dying, right, from Haki drainage while they're trying to hurt you. That's what doesn't make sense to me about obviously I know the trade-off, but I'm saying, like, look at what's happening right now. It seems like they literally can't hurt them. That's what leads me to my question, which is, could Zoro, with Advanced Conquerors Haki, ultimately have been able to damage King while King had the flame on his back anyway? And that's why King took it off, right? Because that's the key here. Because if they can do that, then they can hurt the Seraphims. If they can't do that, then I feel like that fight doesn't really make sense, and it makes Lunarians way more broken, right? So that's the interesting part of it. And last thing about the Katok sound effect, again, I just don't know enough about the Japanese sound effects and when they're used. Maybe it's something used more frequently throughout the series that I didn't realize. Ramen Stain says, I'm not grasping this flame mechanic thing. Could you put it in terms of Pokemon types? Sure. So imagine you're a water Pokemon trainer, like Blue. So naturally, you have a Charmander, right? Oh, wait, you wouldn't, because that doesn't make any fucking sense. Guys, I get that he moves faster. I'm saying that it doesn't make sense to trade off one for the other if you literally can't lose with the other one, right? Montag451 says, Lunarians gotta have some sort of weakness or drawback with the flames, because if they're so invincible and strong, how do they get wiped out? Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if it comes down to something like, well, that giant island-destroying attack or whatever that Im did is the only way, then maybe that's the secret. Who knows? Named says, didn't Oda make a point of they both, Zoro and King, were overrating each other or something, so they tried to end it quickly? I don't know. Maybe I should pull up the panels of the fight. I don't remember that. I know that they're both trying to end it quickly, but overrating each other? Red Region says, I sort of assumed that King had a stamina limit, or couldn't hit Zoro because he wasn't fast enough with the flames on. Again, he wouldn't need to hit Zoro, and I think he was hitting Zoro even without the flames on, right? He was fighting Zoro with the flames on, without the flames on, stuff like that. But the point is, he wouldn't need to hit Zoro if he had the flames on, right? Because Zoro can't do anything to him if he has the flames on, in theory. Unless it's established... Let me pull it up again, right? Because we're just talking at this point, basically, right? There's nothing that suggests that King has a stamina limit, the same way there's nothing that suggests that the Seraphim have a stamina limit right now, but maybe that's something we find out. It's chapter 1036. Let's take a look at this. I don't want to pull panels on stream. No, it's 1035. My bad. Okay, so what does King say? Or what is said here? It's not 1035. It is 1035? Nerve AMV Maker says, King starts blocking even with flame on. Zoro calls us out saying, I must be hurting you now. Luffy did the same call out to Kaido. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I remember there being some sort of quote there, and that's what I was hoping for there to be here, because it wouldn't make sense otherwise, right? So let me read it out. Okay, so if this drags on, the sword... Yeah, so Zoro even says, I don't have much time. If this drags on, the sword will suck the life from me. And King says, I can sense the threat you represent. So Zoro's made it clear that he doesn't have much of a time. Like, he doesn't have much time to work with here. Okay, let's see. Okay, Zoro says, the flames are on. No point attacking now. Okay, then King gets fast. Zoro says he's fast, meaning that I can cut him. Okay. Wait. Here's the point that you were talking about, right? So they keep going. Then Zoro says, why bother to block my attacks? I thought they did nothing to you unless you're scared of what I can do. And at this point, King does have the flames on, but he has started blocking Zoro's attacks. So I would like to believe that at this point, yes, Zoro's attacks are strong enough that King seems to have realized that even if he had the flames on, it's not a good idea to block him. But it hasn't been demonstrated yet, right? So we haven't gotten a single panel yet of a Lunarian with their flames on actually being hurt, with or without Conqueror's Haki being involved. So it's tricky. I think the Lunarians here, the Seraphim, will have to be the first test. Yeah, people are saying I think Zoro's... So this is what makes sense. This is the only thing that makes sense, right? If Zoro would have been able to do some damage to... Because Zoro's open about it. He literally says out loud to King, I don't have much time, the sword's draining my stamina, right? So, if Zoro doesn't have much time, the sword's draining his stamina, right? In theory, King could go out with use his speed, go on the offense and stuff, but that just opens the possibility of being defeated. If King really can't be damaged by Zoro's advanced Conqueror's Haki, then King would just keep his flames up because Zoro literally can't do anything to him, and Zoro's already stated, look, I'll just lose if I can't win soon, right? If I can't beat you, I just lose because the sword is draining my Haki, right? So there's a time limit. So King has no incentive to take his flames off if he really doesn't believe that Zoro can hurt him with advanced Conqueror's Haki. Zoro even has a quote in here suggesting that King is now scared of being hit by him even with the flames on, because Zoro says, why bother to block my attacks? I thought they did nothing to you unless you're scared of what I can do. So we're left open-ended. We never actually get to see Zoro cutting King with... We never get to see proof, basically, right? So let's find out. This is where we find out, right? There's Seraphims. Luffy and Zoro have not been able to hurt them so far. We can assume Luffy and Zoro have not been using advanced Conqueror's Haki. We need to find out soon, right? Otherwise it changes what we view as Lunarians as basically being like really fucking strong to absolutely fucking broken. Mio says, could Caesar cause the havoc going on right now? No, too much of a gag character in my opinion. The cover story kind of builds up a grudge against Vegapunk. The chapter title makes me think that. It's okay, so I mean, like, this arc has a lot of similarities to Punk Hazard, obviously, but I just can't see like yes, Caesar's significance has been built up again, but the significance of who the killer is has also been built up to be fairly significant. So it feels like it has to be someone more important than Caesar, because Caesar's just such a non-threat at this point. It's hard to take him seriously. Acrylic YT, welcome to the Yonko. Thanks for joining. AG Panda says King is a gambler, high risk, high reward. No, but that's not how... But you get high reward, and you can do zero risk, high reward. If Zoro literally can't hurt him with the flames on his back, then it's not a gamble, right? Then it's zero risk, high reward, because you win automatically, because Zoro will lose once his Haki is drained, right? And Zoro can't do anything to you, right? So it can't be a gamble. It's not like... Gamble makes sense if it's like, okay, I can go high offense or high defense, right? But neither are perfect, right? The high offense could fall short. The high offense leaves me vulnerable. High defense means I can't fight back as well, and, you know, the defense can be broken down, right? But if it's like, well, I can go on offense and be stupid, or I can go on defense and literally be invincible, then it's not, you're not balancing either thing, right? It's just one is the better option. There's no gamble. It would just be stupid. It would be like if Mr. One basically was like, well, I could turn off, to use my ultimate move, I have to turn off my steel protection and stuff, and so I was like, okay, fuck, I'll just cut you while you use my ultimate move, while you use your ultimate move. I've been losing up till now, right? So we have to assume, for any of this to make sense, that Zoro could have probably hurt King while King had his flame on, right? And that King was somewhat afraid of that, because that's why Zoro says what he says here, right? Why bother to block my attacks? I thought they did nothing to you. King has the flame on at this point. At this point, Zoro says, unless you're scared of what I can do. We have to assume that, otherwise none of this makes sense, right? Uchek says, Oda's not stupid. Of course it's added defense and not invincibility. The thing is, we're going to find out here, right? So we need to find out in the next couple chapters or so if Luffy and Zoro use advanced Conqueror's Haki against the Seraphim here, and that still does not defeat the Seraphim, then basically the King fight makes no sense. I don't think that that's going to be the case, because I think that was already implied in the King fight. But I'm very interested to see what happens, right? Because again, we got the quote. As long as we have this quote, we can assume that Advanced Conqueror's Haki can probably do something to King, and King was scared of it, even with the flame on his back. So, let's see. People saying King also choosing not to fly anymore. Yeah, that one I give that more of a pass, I guess, because here's the thing. King did fly in his final move. You know, his final move, he did all of the smartest things, I suppose, which is he flew away and he did exactly what you would want him to do, right? He flew away and did a strong long-range attack, right? Wouldn't that be the exact thing that you would be looking for? Fly away, use a long range attack. Zoro just jumped, because jumping is a thing, right? Zoro just jumped, and I don't think that Zoro is necessarily useless when it comes to dealing with something in the air. Again, like, you can jump, and on top of that, the very next chapter, Zoro actually Geppoed himself, with his swords. Instead of kicks, he Geppoed himself with his swords back to the island. So he can do stuff, right? It's actually pretty cool. He just bounces himself around in the air with the swords and stuff like that. So, I don't think like character can fly, therefore Zoro can't beat him is a thing. Knut Worgen says, "Hey Mort, writing an essay right now on surrealist art. Have you read the first chapter of Jojo Lands? It's probably my favorite first chapter for a part. It is my favorite first chapter for a part too. It's definitely my favorite first chapter. I think, yeah, undeniably, it's my favorite first chapter because it gets, you know what, JoJolion had a, I think it gets everything across real quick, right? It gets not just okay." So, part 7, best part, but it also took a while to... How do I explain this? I feel like a lot of the parts, they take a while to explain. Like, part 3, we gotta explain what stands are. It's a mysterious thing, right? Part 4 is cool. I like part 4's start a lot. I like part 4's opening chapter a lot. I think that might be my other favorite one. I think part 4 might be my favorite opening chapter because I think Jotaro meeting Josuke is really cool, right? Part 5 is cool. Okay, I'll keep it short, right? Part 9, I enjoyed the fact that I feel like we got to understand the characters' personalities really quickly. We got to understand the setting fairly quickly, and we got to understand the stands very quickly, right? So it wasted no time with long explanations, I suppose. And we got the first main conflict, I suppose, established very quickly as well. So there's a lot to like about the first chapter of Part 9. Ceci Rapalny says, "Yeah, but Luffy won't die at his F. 20 years old. That'd be so depressing." No, it depends, because Luffy, I think, Luffy at the end of his story, Luffy might die, he might not die, right? As long as, for Luffy, right, he's a character that could have died at Logtown the first time. And he would have died with no regrets. That's the thing. Because he lived life exactly how he wanted to live. So if you imagine Luffy at the end of the story, what does Luffy live for? He wanted to be the freest man, and likely have wanted to achieve freedom, whatever. He will have achieved the dream that he talked about, right? The one that he told the Screw about, the one that he told Ace and Sabo about. He will have achieved that. So whatever that is, he will have achieved it, right? So everything that he could have wanted, he would have gotten, right? He would have gotten to live the greatest adventure ever. I think basically by the end of One Piece, we even get like a bit of a recap of all the places that Roger went to that were so fantastical, and it's a mirror image of all the things that Luffy got to experience. So he will have Luffy, by the end of the story, would have gotten to have seen all of the most amazing places in the One Piece world. He would have had the grandest adventure possible. Luffy would have achieved his dreams, right? His personal dreams, not his grand dreams, but his personal dreams of becoming Pirate King, surpassing Shanks, becoming the freest man. Had the best adventures. There would be nothing left for him, as far as I can tell, for him to really... Like, he would have, the way they describe Roger, a man who had achieved everything, right? So when Roger went out, it wasn't exactly, in other people's minds, it was like he had wealth, fame, power, but I feel like what Oda was really saying was that Roger, by the end of his story, he'd achieved everything there was for a man to have experienced in the world, right? Traveled everywhere, seen everything, reached the pinnacle of the pirate world, experienced complete freedom, all of that stuff. There was one final will that he couldn't, just because of his illness, carry out. But Luffy, so he left that to be carried on, but Luffy won't have that. By the end of Luffy's story, like, he's such a simple character, right? Luffy doesn't work the same way a normal human being does, where a normal human being, if I had to die at 20, even if I achieved all of my life's ambitions and everything like that, if I had to die at 20, that'd be kind of tragic. But with Luffy, he's ready to die at any point, because he lives life without regrets, so he'd be happy to die at any point. He will always face death with a smile. And for Luffy, he's such a simplistic, almost exaggerated version of an ideal, right? That he doesn't function the same way with sorrows and regrets and fears of death and everything like that, and complexities that a normal human would. He really is just, if you look at Luffy on paper, it's like if he achieved everything, right? Became the freest, achieved his wildest dreams, brought whatever dream he wanted to the world, created the type of world he wanted to create, had all of the adventures you could possibly have, experienced the highest and highs of life, went on these grand epic storylines and quests with his friends and everything like that, I think that Luffy would, at the end of the day, be perfectly fine walking off into sunset, being like, yeah, I did it. That was my life. It was a great life. All right, bye, everyone. That's the type of character he is, right? It would be depressing from a real-world person perspective, but not from the type of character that Luffy's written perspective, right? Free Worry Force says, hey, Morge, have you noticed the Seraphims can't use their devil fruits while their flames are on? Could this be a product of the Green Blood? Check out 1077 and 1076. Is that confirmed that they can't, or is it just a coincidence so far? Let's see 1076. That's where the Dice fruit comes out, right? Because King could use... Hold on. Can't use their devil fruits while their flames are on. Because King could use his devil fruit while his flame was on. Right? He could fly around in pterodactyl form. Yeah, I don't know if it's a can't situation or if just they just don't. But then why would... I don't know. We can't even see the... Oh, no, you might be right. Their flames are not on when they're using their devil fruits, though. That's interesting. That's interesting. Greg Davram says, you would think Advanced Conquerors are the strongest technique in the series could pass the durability of the flames. I still think it can. I just think that they haven't used it yet. Let me ask you guys, do you think... Are Luffy and Zoro using Advanced Conquerors Haki? Are Luffy and Zoro using Advanced Conquerors Haki? Yes. No. Here's the thing. I would love a scene, maybe next chapter or something like that, where Luffy and Zoro finally do pull out Advanced Conquerors Haki together. I think that would be a cool scene. And getting to see the shock on Kaku and Lucci's faces when they see what their full, potential is. Okay, so the overwhelming majority of people believe no. All right? So we have yet to see. Let's hope that they get into it soon. I don't want to be up in the air about... Here's the thing. I think in One Piece, very, very often, we get into long stretches where... Because I did a whole video about this, like what everyone gets wrong about Haki, right? And the reality is that I think that throughout the series, there's lots of debates. Like, you remember how often people, I think especially throughout... Act 1, Act 2, early Act 3 of Wano, especially early Act 3 of Wano, people were complaining, why doesn't Luffy have advanced objects? Why isn't he using Future Sight? And there's so many things left open to interpretation. I think over time, we get to find more clarification, or we're able to infer more things because we get more soft examples, right? So we begin to realize, hey, Kaido doesn't use Future Sight all the time. Okay, you know what? It makes sense. If we go back and look at certain quotes, we can't even expect characters to be using Future Sight all the time. It's weird. It'd be like expecting a character to be using Advanced Armament Haki every second that they're walking around. That makes no sense, right? So there's certain clarifications that we get over time, or things that we're able to infer over time regarding why something Haki-wise doesn't make sense at this or that moment, right? I hope that this is not a case like that, where I really, really hope that we don't conclude this fight, like this, we cut away from this fight, or the fight gets broken up, the Seraphim leave, or Luffy, Zoro, Lucci, Kaku decide to leave and leave things alone or something like that, or it gets interrupted in some way. I hope things don't interrupt before we get to see confirmation of Luffy and Zoro using Advanced Conquerors Haki, because that's just going to lead to so many question marks in terms of how do we even value Advanced Conquerors Haki, how strong are the Lunarians, how are the Lunarians even taken out in the first place, why, how do we know when characters are definitely using Advanced Conquerors Haki and such? Because we think we know, right? We can all tell that Luffy wasn't using it against Lucci, but then it starts to become like, okay, why isn't he using it now against characters that really need it? So I hope that this is not a case where we're cutting away from this fight early for any reason. Jarence Rambo says, will you ever make a Kid and Law video like you did with Zoro and Sanji? I love those videos and would love your thoughts on them like you did Zoro and Sanji. It's tricky because I think that Law and Kid, there's not much of a... You know what's interesting? I am gonna do a video on. I have a video that I've wanted to do a bit on Luffy's rivals, Law and Kid. Um, you know what? Let me make a note real quick on one thing. Let me make a note real quick on one thing. One thing. Before I forget, it's on that topic. Okay, so one thing on Law and Kid is that the dynamic is very, very different from Zoro and Sanji in that in story, I think things are written similarly to Zoro and Sanji, right? Where, there's a bit of a rivalry. They're portrayed as 1A and 1B below Luffy, right? Or 2 and 3 below Luffy, I don't know, whatever. But the tricky thing is that with Law and Kid, with Zoro and Sanji, what ultimately makes things so volatile, so heated, right? It's more so the fandom than anything. Because with Zoro and Kid, they both had, especially pre-time skip, if you look at character fan bases in One Piece, Luffy was the most popular, Zoro was consistently second, and Sanji was pretty consistently third, right? In the fandom, Luffy's always been put at the top, right? So that's why there's not as much to debate there between Zoro versus Luffy or Sanji versus Luffy or something. But it's Sanji and Zoro where Oda plays up the idea that they bicker, they fight, etc. Not seriously fight, but they go at each other and they dislike each other, not in a, they butt heads quite a bit in the manga itself, right? So when you take two such diehard fan bases for two characters, who in story the characters are being pitted so hard against one another, that's what produces so much hate between Zoro and Sanji fans, to the point that it feels like the Zoro-Sanji dynamic is even more overblown in the story, because out of story people care so much about it, to the point that Zoro cannot be involved in a single thing. Like, he cannot be in the fucking chapter or something, and anything that Sanji does is going to be talked about and scrutinized and broken down and made fun of or put on a pedestal, vice versa. You remember when the Jinbei Seraphim first showed up and attacked the Straw Hat Pirates? Sanji got in like one kick or something like that, and I remember that chapter in itself just exploded with people just being like, you know what, Sanji's not even as strong as Jinbei, what would Zoro have done to this Jinbei Seraphim, stuff like that. Like, Sanji can't even put down the Jinbei Seraphim easily, or look, it's not a bad showing at all, like, it was just one kick, blah blah blah, clearly he knocked him away. I don't know, it's just like every single thing gets broken down so much with those two characters, even if the other one is not involved whatsoever. It's really fucking toxic, right? I've never seen two characters, you gotta get to something like probably the two Twilight characters, right? The wolf and the vampire, the Jacob and the Edward, right? Those two, that's what you get to with like a fan base where two people are so fucking divided about two characters, right? Law and Kid will never have that sort of situation because Kid has no fans. I would argue in recent times, Oda has been playing up the Law Kid rivalry dynamic, I suppose, or their butting heads sort of dynamic. I think that was arguably just as prominent in Wano as Zoro versus Sanji in story, or maybe even more so. But you'll never generate that level of people just don't give a fuck because everybody's already picked their guy. Everybody likes Law better. Everybody already likes Law better. So it's kind of like it makes for very poor discussion or anything online because people will just casually basically say, I remember while Wano was going on, especially towards the tail end, everybody, like, the Big Mom fight wrapped and everything, and people were kind of grumbling, like, you know, yeah, technically they took her down 2v1, but, you know, and we get the sense that Kid's portrayal is supposed to be, Kid's probably supposed to be stronger than Law just because of his role and his portrayal and stuff like that, but you know what, fuck it, like, Law did more damage in the end. Law's just as strong as Kid, stuff like that. That was kind of what was being said towards the end of Wano, and then things progressed a bit, and before even the Law and Blackbeard fight, you leave Wano a few chapters down the line, and people have kind of made up their mind. They're like, you know what, fuck it, like, Law's stronger. Like, people will happily trash Kid. You can throw, I remember having these debates and stuff like that, and like, I could say stuff like, you know what, I think Zoro's stronger than Kid, which I think is a controversial take. I think that should be viewed as a controversial take. That's saying that Zoro is, like, Luffy's right hand, is stronger than the character that has been portrayed as Luffy's number one rival in the story, right? I think that should be a controversial take. I do think Zoro's stronger than Kid, but I think that should have some pushback. There's no pushback because nobody really gives a fuck. People are like, yeah, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, probably, fuck it. Zoro's stronger than Kid. We don't care. If you say Zoro's stronger than Law, that's its own whole debate. That's a shitstorm. That's a bunch of other stuff, right? People don't care. Law versus Kid, it's like you need one side to have somebody fight. You need people fighting for you for there to be an interesting dynamic in the community. You know what I'm saying? Boy, why are we talking about Sanji still? No, it's not a law. It's not a rant. Why are we? This is what I'm talking about. I mentioned Sanji like 5 minutes ago, and people are still going off about him because that's just, it becomes the fixation. If you like Zoro, then you gotta talk shit about Sanji. That's just the way that the internet works, unfortunately. That's most people, I think. Guys, let's get the stream likes to 400. Let's get it to 400. No, people are missing the point. Now people are just trying to power. I'm not trying to get into the actual power scaling. You guys are missing the point. I'm not getting into the power scaling. I'm just talking. I'm just talking about the way things are and why people argue about certain things. I'm not trying to do a ranking or something here. Okay, let's simplify it, right? Zoro and Sanji, they're pitted against each other frequently in the manga, and they both have two huge fan bases. That's why you get a lot of discussion. Law and Kid also being pitted against each other, but they have no fan bases. Kid has no fan base. Law's a huge fan base. So the discussion is too one-sided, so nobody cares, right? People just don't care. Connor, I'm not going to get into a Zoro versus Law debate right now. This is not the time for it. I'm leaving this shit alone. Goldie says, Morge, why do you talk for 2 seconds about a topic and then everyone says you're ranting? No, people want a Law rant, as far as I understand. People really want a Law rant because I've, in the past, gone off on many rants about Law. But I'm past that now. Let's see him. Let's wait. Let's see Law's next reappearance in the story. You know, when he's locked up in Blackbeard's prison looking like a beat-up prisoner, kind of like Kid did after fighting Kaido. Let's wait for that. Then we can talk about Law again. Because it's entirely possible that the next time we see Law, he's sitting there with a defeated Blackbeard. It's not going to happen. But, I don't want to jump to conclusions, Brandon King says, Morge out here calling Geo a nobody. Dude, I don't think even Geo abandoned Kid by the end of Wano from what I remember. I'm not trying to, Geo's the perfect example because he was the biggest Kid supporter. I don't think he abandoned Kid by the end of Wano. I think he's still, from what I've seen of his tweets, and he is one of the funniest Twitter accounts to follow. The most entertaining, I suppose, One Piece Twitter accounts to follow for sure. I don't mean that in a good way or bad way. Just think that he tweets some fun stuff to prompts good discussions, I suppose, or controversial discussions. But even him, I think by the end of Wano, he was acknowledging that Kid wasn't all that, I think. And so once you lose Geo, who you got in your corner, really, Jarens Rambo says, Kid was in some people's top 30 over Law recently. Yeah, but that's a perfectly reasonable thing because in the story, Kid is hyped up more as Luffy's rival than Law. It's just that, I think that there's a bit of a difference between author intent versus what people ultimately take away from things, right? And then it's hard to conclude, how much can we extrapolate about author's intent if we're all taking away this thing, right? I do personally feel that Oda's intent overall is that Kid, I don't know about stronger than Law, but at least the two are the same. And if one of them's supposed to be stronger, then Kid is probably supposed to be stronger than Law. Because Oda even had Law say a line like, why do you keep coming in and doing a flashier attack than mine? It almost makes me seem like I'm your opening act or something like that, right? So it feels like that's Oda's intent, that Kid is supposed to be a bigger deal, and Kid is the one that Oda keeps writing as the one butting heads with Luffy, the one that Luffy treats more as a rival and is more competitive with than Law and things like that. And the one that Oda hyped up more from the beginning and earlier in the story, right? So it feels like Oda's intent might be that Kid is supposed to be the stronger and more significant out of the two, but what people are generally taking away is, dude, Law's ability looks cooler. it seems like it does more damage than, what Big Mom did. Law looks more badass in general. Kid tends to get humiliated more often. So most people's takeaway is Law looks more formidable, right? So it's really hard to tell, basically, whether or not Law is supposed to be portrayed as stronger, or whether Oda is kind of just Oda is almost like Oda is not properly giving Kid, I guess, the right moments or something like that, or Oda thinks that Kid looks cooler than he does when he does stupid ass shit like his gun or his bull and stuff like that. It's just hard to say. I mean, there is some self-awareness because Oda even has Law say like, oh, what are you going to do next? Like a bull, a rhino, or whatever, blah, 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 blah. But do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, there's plenty of situations most likely when an author wants to portray something. So he's having characters do feats and stuff like that, but he's wanting to portray something. But an author can't perfectly measure what a reader is going to take away from, who's stronger between a dynamic, like a situation or something like that. So readers can take away one thing or another, we don't know at the end of the day what the author's intent was. My feel is that Kid was supposed to be portrayed as stronger, but over time, readers have taken away and been like, you know what, Law looked stronger to us. You get what I'm saying? I think a similar example is the Whitebeard Akainu fight. So I remember when the Whitebeard Akainu fight happened, the conclusion to it, most people said Whitebeard obviously kicked Akainu's ass, right? And most people referred to it as like, Whitebeard, once he got serious, he beat Akainu's ass really easily, etc., right? That was the prevailing feeling for a long time. In more recent years, I think because we're approaching the end of the story, we haven't seen Whitebeard in a long time, and Akainu's kind of, he's the guy, the villain sitting at the end of the Marines that we're looking forward to. A lot of the dialogue has shifted to, Akainu took off half of Whitebeard's face. Akainu pretty much won that fight, right? Because Whitebeard put him down, but then Akainu got up later. So, at the end of the day, Oda knows the correct intent, right? He knows the correct intent. He can only do so much when he's writing a scenario because he can't, we don't know, we can't read his mind. So we can't know at the end of the day what were we supposed to definitely take away from that? Who were we supposed to view as stronger, right? Because stuff like that can change. Initially, everybody was like, yeah, Whitebeard's stronger. Over time, given enough time, people are looking back and they're like, you know what? Akainu feels more hype now. Akainu won that fight and stuff like that, right? End of the day, Oda's intent, right? Just because it feels like Law did more during the Big Mom fight, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's supposed to be stronger in the story. Oda may have messed up a little bit in terms of portraying who is supposed to be viewed as the stronger character there, because it does feel like generally Kid is supposed to be more significant, but that doesn't quite, match up with the actions that we get shown, Kid Smitty says, do you think the Crocodile Seraphim will be a young girl? It's a shame the Crocomom theory birthed the idea of Crocodile being a woman. I think Crocodile being a woman is still a very popular theory. I think that's still a very popular theory. It's just Crocomom's the extreme version of it, I would love to see if, we get a Kid Crocodile and it does turn out to be a girl, and that's maybe one of the reasons that Seraphim in particular is being hidden from us. Grizzly Adam says, Morge, just make that Wiper video so that people can finally understand the one true rival of Luffy. Yeah, I'll say this to the end of the... Okay. The only real rival Luffy has in the Blue Sea right now, the only real rival is Blackbeard, right? But Blackbeard is a rival because he's everything that Luffy is not. If you want a rival that's everything that Luffy is, right? And equal in that sense of the word, there is only one guy in the entire story. And that is Wiper. The thing that I'm caught between right now, because I do have a fun Wiper video that I've been wanting to make for a bit, is whether or not I would focus it on, because there's a few other characters that I think are underrated characters throughout One Piece that I want to talk about. Whether I would do it as a package deal, so the greatest underrated characters in One Piece, or a Wiper specific video as the greatest rival that Luffy ever had. Hawkbuck says, I'm arguing Odin greater than Zoro with a Zoro turd. Thoughts? Dude, I mean, I think Odin is stronger than Zoro is right now. I think the tricky thing with Zoro always, at least recently, is that we don't know Zoro's upper limit at the moment because the key pieces... I'll say this. I think from everything we've seen of Zoro, I think Odin is more impressive. I think from everything we've seen from Zoro. Yeah, I just think Odin is more impressive. But I think it's possible that Oda could write Zoro's Ashura up his sleeve, right? The thing I've always said is that the moment that Zoro cut Kaido was with Ashura, which is basically, as far as we can tell, a technique that he cannot tap into easily, is very mysterious, is extremely powerful because it's only used post time skip, basically overpowered a Yonko and cut him, scarred him permanently, right? Which is a huge deal for only using a technique once. That's like batting 1,000. Like, that is a phenomenal, showing for a one-time use of a technique. So it begs the question, what if Zoro could use that all the time, especially now that he has a mastery over Advanced Conqueror's Haki, right? So until we get that question answered, we really don't know what Zoro's upper limit is, and Oda could make it anything, right? It could be next time we see Ashura, it's not as big of a deal as we initially thought, right? Or it could be, yeah, it is as strong as we thought, and when Zoro can use it continuously, he's basically an all-time great swordsman or something, right? Reality is we're nearing the end of the story, so there's only so much time for power-ups left. Zoro's gotten Advanced Conqueror's Haki down. He has Ashura up his sleeve. My assumption is that the only way to really get Zoro to endgame, like we're in the final fucking saga, right? So the only way to get Zoro to Mihawk's level is kind of just, we can assume that once he has Ashura down, it's going to be a huge, 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 huge deal. So the next time we see that, we're going to kind of understand how strong Zoro actually is at this point, right? And I think it's going to be stronger than we expect just because, again, we're so close to the point that Zoro has to be able to beat Mihawk. And Oda has already planted this secret technique that Zoro's only, like this ultimate technique that Zoro's only used once, but is probably going to be able to use much better now that he has mastery over, Conqueror's Haki, right? So that's why it's difficult to scale Zoro right now, because if you go just by what we've seen, I think that, or what we've been shown, I think that Odin is greater than Zoro. If we go by what we could speculate Zoro's full strength could be, based on the point we're at in the story, based on the glimpses into his full potential that we've seen. So it's like, how would Oda write it if Zoro had to go all out today with his Master of Advanced Conqueror's Haki and with Ashura in his back pocket? Then that's more for debate. Then maybe he's stronger than Odin. You guys get what I'm saying? I think people forget a lot about Odin's greatness because I think you really can't understand. The reality is that Kaido was still giving Odin tremendous respect that long after his death, right? Kaido dropped his top 5 at least most. Kaido's looking at Luffy, right? And Kaido's thinking, how high up can his ceiling go? And he's throwing Odin in there in terms of what Kaido's imagining a ceiling to be with Roger, Whitebeard, Shanks, Rocks, right? Obviously, Odin is not as strong as those guys, we can assume. But the fact that Kaido still holds him in that high regard this long later, that's really crazy. And the fact that when Zoro's doing his big attack, one of his attacks to attack Kaido on the roof, Kaido's worried because he senses Odin's haki, and he's like, I don't want to fuck with that again, so he moves out of the way. When the Scabbards are attacking him, Kaido's remembering Odin's haki. And you can say that, okay, all of this is because Odin really scarred Kaido and left a big impression on him and everything like that, but at the end of the day, these are also significant battle judgments that a Yonko is making in the moment. And even now, in his prime, Kaido does not want to fuck with Odin's haki. I'm not saying Odin is stronger than Kaido right now or anything, but I'm just saying that that's a big deal that Kaido still remembers it and holds it in such high regard, even as strong as Kaido's become at this point. And that circles back around to during the King fight, when Zoro starts using Enma to its fullest, even then, Zoro's hitting essentially the peak of his level as a swordsman as we've seen so far. And as he enters that level, he's in shock and awe, thinking back to, holy shit, so this dude Odin was just always at this level, basically. He was always able to use Enma like this, and I'm just now hitting the point where, he's having an awakening essentially at, he's reaching that stage of swordsmanship that Odin was clearly already at from a much earlier point, basically. So it feels like, at best, you could say that once Zoro masters Enma, he has now entered maybe the same tier as Oden, but it definitely feels, just reading Zoro's own words and the way other people see it, like Kaido, etc., it does feel like Oden is still kind of a more impressive swordsman up to this point. Again, by the end of the story, and likely very soon in the story, will likely be established that Zoro's ahead of Oden, just because he's about to take on Mihawk and all of that stuff. He has Ashura, which was something totally different, very, very advanced technique from what we can tell. That's pretty much it. Vitanite says it's weird because Zoro also scarred a stronger Kaido, a feat Oden did 20 years ago, to a weaker one. That's true, but you can look at it two ways, which is one, that's the biggest thing I think Zoro has going for him. The way I look at it is two ways. One, Zoro did that with Ashura, which again, that's not a technique that we don't know enough about it. That's all I'm saying. I've already made the argument that right now Oda can write Ashura however he wants, right? He could say it puts Zoro at Yonko level if he wanted. Like, he really could. He could say it puts Zoro at Admiral level if he wanted. He could say it doesn't move Zoro up that much, right? There's a wide range, because we've only seen it once, and it did something really, really, really big, which was a feat that was hyped up for a long, long, long ass time that no one had been able to do. Fucking Big Mom had not scarred Kaido, and she and him fought for like 2 days straight, basically, right? Kaido has run into all sorts of characters in the last 20 years. So Zoro basically beating him in a clash and scarring him with Ashura is a huge deal. Right now, Oda has a lot of freedom to say that if Zoro masters Ashura, uses Ashura continuously, what level it could be at, right? You can go pretty broad range, because we've only seen it once and it was crazy, right? I'm not even counting Ashura at the moment, because that's realistically not how Zoro fights normally, right? That seems like an extreme case, it looks like. So yeah, Zoro did scar Kaido much later, but then you also have to take into account Oden kind of did that more easily than Zoro did, considering Zoro used a move that we don't know how much control he even has over it. 2, Oden basically defeated Kaido with that move. From the way it looked like, Kaido was basically done after, like, Oden could have gone in for the kill right then, right? He could have defeated Kaido right then, right? So it's a weaker Kaido, but it looked like Oden could have just gone in and killed Kaido right after that. Kaido was helpless. He needed to be saved by the hostage situation. With Zoro, he got the hit on Kaido. He couldn't follow up because Zoro succumbed to his own injuries, but I don't think that Zoro could have just gone in for the kill either way, even if he wasn't injured, right? Even if he was at max health, I don't think he could just turn around and been like, all right, now time to behead Kaido or whatever, or ZKK. So you have to take that into account too, right? What was the effect? And then the last thing is that, the falling to his knees point is a significant point, right? Like, Kaido, at least he was close. He had to lean on his club and stuff like that. He was permanently scarred. But, when Oden scarred Kaido, it was basically curtains for him for the most part, right? Hawkbox says, one last cheeky question. Prime Oden or Mihawk? Austin says Big Mom wasn't fighting Kaido serious. See, I hate when people say that, because that's just not true. That's just not true. It's like, yes, they were. Why would it not be serious? They're not friends. They're established to not be friends. In fact, before the arc, it is established that they've been like fighting like cats and dogs. Basically, like they've hated each other for a long ass time. They do have a bond that they're able to reconnect over the course of the arc, right? And Kaido does regret when she's gone. But we saw weird things left off with them, which is Big Mom basically cursing Kaido to hell and back as Kaido abandoned them at Rock's Valley and stuff. They were at the very least, they were fighting seriously enough that they were splitting the sky, right? I don't know what else. What do you really need to say that Kaido and Big Mom are fighting seriously? We see everything. We see their expressions. They're splitting the sky and everything like that. They're not holding back. There's no reason to think that they're holding back, So Mihawk versus Oden. I'm taking Mihawk, but I think it's just so hard to scale Odin. He's probably one of the hardest characters in the entire series to scale. It's just, I'm taking Mihawk. I think the Black Blade thing is probably the biggest thing that Mihawk has going for him, right? Mihawk has a Black Blade. But the thing about the Black Blades is, I just don't know how much that's how much of that is. We can assume that Black Blades is a. Because, okay, here's the thing. We don't know. Did Oda definitely have Black Blades in mind as a thing from the start of the story? I just don't know. I just don't know. Because, it might have just been a cool thing that he came up with during Wano. But then he, because he's like, Ryuma's blade, I made that a black blade. Oh, Mihawk's blade is a black blade. And, I already started coloring things black to show hockey for a while. You know what? Fuck it. Black blade is the ultimate swordsmanship technique. And it's just okay. So then, I don't know. It's probably, it's probably a thing. I don't know. Black Blades is just difficult. It's just difficult, man. It's just Let's take word of God, right? Black Blades are basically very rare. Only Mihawk and Ryuma have done them. So that's a huge deal. That's what I really used to put above Mihawk above Odin. Kevin Garcia says, has it been theorized Croc Seraphim to be a woman? Yep, we talked about that earlier this stream. Gahanapur says, makes no sense. Roger and Shanks don't have it. I mean, the way I've headcanonized that is that basically, because we know that Roger is stronger than Mihawk, right? The Mihawk, it's so crazy, dude. How you be in the fan base long enough, and you see how things develop over time. It's wild because, Mihawk used to be. There was a strong period of time. Mihawk stocks have gone up a lot recently. There was a long period of time where Mihawk was much lower on people's lists. Much lower on people's lists. Post time skip, I think when the post time skip started, Shanks was way higher on pretty much everyone's list, and Mihawk was a controversial pick because people forget this. Because now we have 500 more chapters of context and everything. So before you type away in chat and everything, just remember you have 500 more chapters of context before you start sharing your opinions. I'm just talking about how I remember things were at a certain point. Mihawk, during Marineford, did not look that good. And nowadays we have so much context that, okay, he was really not trying to an absurd degree, to an unimaginable degree. He must have been not trying, right? But during, from Marineford, not only was Mihawk not hyped that much, it really felt like Admirals and Yonko, Admirals and Whitebeard and Shanks and stuff were more, the spotlight really was on them, and Mihawk was this dude that we're like, he's supposed to be really strong. We know he's supposed to be really strong, but it just doesn't, Oda's just really not, Mihawk was used to fucking hype up Jozu to start the war, right? Jozu, the weakest of the commander, weaker than Marco, well, not the weakest. We don't know. At least not even Marco, right? It was fucking Jozu to hype up the war. And again, everybody knew logically that Mihawk's holding back, but it's just kind of the feeling that you get, right? So much of how we rate One Piece characters is kind of the feel that we get around certain characters. Like Dragon, for the longest time, it's kind of just the portrayal and the screen presence that he brings that had him really high, right? That's just the way it works. That's what you do when you don't have a lot of information, right? So Mihawk coming out of the war, I remember there was lots of debate of whether he's Yonko tier or whatever, or whether he's as strong as Admirals, whether he, Mihawk versus Kizaru, Mihawk versus Aokiji, stuff like that would be controversial, basically. Most people did not have him as this character that's, nowadays you get a lot of people who are saying, yeah, Mihawk was stronger than Whitebeard at the war. Back then you would have had pretty much nobody, not a single person saying Mihawk was stronger than Whitebeard at the war. But we've had so much time, opinions just change, and people get... the hype from back then is not the same as the hype for right now. Right now, where a lot of people are really excited for Mihawk. Mihawk's had some cool in-story characters talking him up and everything like that. So it's kind of his time. So you have people in the community saying, yeah, Mihawk was stronger than Whitebeard at the time. You have people saying Mihawk would have kicked Kaido's ass, like Mihawk would have beaten Kaido. Before Wano, no one was saying Mihawk was stronger than Kaido. Fucking nobody, right? things just change. And nowadays, I think that the split between Shanks versus Mihawk is a lot more even. I think 500 chapters ago, it was heavily skewed Shanks. Around, yeah, 500 chapters ago, I think for the majority of the time that I've seen the debate, it's been heavily skewed Shanks. I think that hit a peak around Film Red time. So when Shanks scared off Green Bull, I think that was the highest I've ever seen Shanks stocks. And then once we got the Cross Guild stuff and the new Mihawk hype, now I've seen more fraternity. This is the most dead even I've seen Shanks versus Mihawk hype in the entire story. In the entire community. This is how I remember. Cross Guild changed a lot. Yeah, because Cross Guild did a lot of things. And I'm not trying to make an argument one way or another here, although I suppose, your own biases always leak in. But Cross Guild changed a lot of perceptions simply because, one, Cross Guild essentially establishes that Mihawk is a Yonko. Right? He would be a Yonko if he was a pirate with a crew. Because that's essentially what Cross Guild is, right? Buggy is the figurehead of it, so Mihawk's technically not a Yonko, but it fits his character, right? Like, okay, he would never take that title for himself, but we all understand that Mihawk is clearly the powerhouse of this group. His bounty is the highest of this group. He is, like, Cross Guild being called a Yonko crew is essentially the same as Mihawk being called a Yonko, right? And Crocodile is essentially the equivalent of having a first commander, basically. Although it's just a sort of backward situation, because if you look at the whole thing, like, Cross Guild is backwards in that sense, because it's like the most powerful character is not the one with the most authority. Crocodile, who's basically the second strongest, has probably the most leadership and sway in that group, right? But he has the lowest bounty, and he's also not the strongest. And then the weakest guy, Buggy, he's the one that has the title of Yonko, basically, right? So, but we all understand functionally the fact that Cross Guild is being called a Yonko crew, and functionally the Marines clearly recognize that Mihawk is the strongest, has the highest bounty, the one they fear the most, etc. It is the equivalent of calling Mihawk a Yonko. So that confirms something that was a debate for so fucking long. Like, I remember people... There was a long time that people put Mihawk below Big Mom, below Kaido, below Shanks, all of that stuff, right? The only Yonko people said Mihawk might be able to beat was Blackbeard. Now, I don't know, but I do think that it's hard to say for sure what's correct, what's not correct, but I think I see a lot more people say, yeah, Mihawk would probably beat Big Mom. I see some people say Mihawk would beat Kaido. I see about a 50-50 split of people saying Shanks or Mihawk, right? So that's what I'm getting at. It's just changed a lot, right? There was a long time you would not consider Mihawk a Yonko. This was kind of confirming that Mihawk is a Yonko. It also says that Mihawk's a Marine Hunter, which is the craziest title to have in all of One Piece. If you really think about it, Marine Hunter is the single craziest title to have in all of One Piece, because the Marines, it's literally the Marines are the absolute most dominant force on the entire seas, right? The absolute most dominant force on the entire seas. And the fact that Mihawk was never captured, so to be the hunter of the absolute most dominant force of the entire seas is insane. It's not the same as Zoro being a pirate hunter, because pirates aren't a monolith, right? Pirates are a bunch of, you hunt one pirate crew, that doesn't mean you're going after the Yonko, right? The Marines are the fucking Marines. If you have someone hunting Marines, the Marines are a single giant pirate crew, right? If you're hunting Marines, then other Marines are coming after you. And if those Marines are getting taken out, then the stronger Marines are coming after you and after you and after you. So, like, to be above the Marines in the food chain, in a sense, is insane. I'm not saying Mihawk is stronger than all the admirals or whatever, or Fleet Admiral or all that combined, but I'm just saying the fact that he was able to successfully just hunt Marines for so long that they ultimately decided they can't capture him. They need to offer him, like, an olive branch and say, please just be on our side and stop hurting us. That's insane, right? And then just, like, the final confirmation that Mihawk's, like, in his, in the Cross Guild explanation that Mihawk, is a better swordsman than Shanks, can beat Shanks in a swords duel or whatever. That's kind of confirmed for most people. Oh, jeez, what was that? Basim El Madawi says, I haven't forgotten the Vista equals Mihawk takes. Dude, that stuff sounds funny now, right? That stuff sounds funny now. It's so funny, right? Because nowadays I have to go and, like, I'm almost, like, trying to tone down Mihawk hype, because you have people who are arguing that Mihawk is, like, the strongest character in the series, and I just don't think, like, or in the world right now besides Im. I don't think that's the fucking case. I think that Mihawk hype has gone a little overblown, but it's so funny because I've been in the community for so long. I like Mihawk quite a bit. I remember the times that I felt like Mihawk is severely underrated by so many people, right? So it's so weird and so bizarre to see this shift over time to now where I feel like he's being overrated by a lot of people, right? Like I've seen the how did we go from the idea that Mihawk is about first commander level? That was never a popular idea, but that was something that people did say. There was a subsection of people who did say that. I'd say the same amount of people who think that Mihawk is the strongest pirate in the world right now, that percentage of people right now, if you go back in time like 10 years or so to post Marineford War, you'd probably get that same small percentage of people saying that Mihawk is like first commander level, maybe just a bit stronger than Marco, but weaker than admirals, basically, right? But that's because the Vista Mihawk thing. It's like, again, we have so much so the full continuity of it and the full continuity of how power scaling and takes changes is just wild to me. I think people are very reactionary sometimes, but nobody has a perfect power scaling take, only Oda at the end of the day, right? But the Vista equals Mihawk thing, we have the context now, but you have to remember back then, admirals were getting matched up with commanders, so we couldn't fully we understood the admirals are holding back a little bit, but we never got a full gauge of how much they're holding back. We really didn't. Mihawk wasn't even fighting Marco or Jozu. He was being pitted against Vista. Vista is kind of a new phase. Like, at least Marco and Jozu were hyped up first and third commanders that we saw from like hundreds of chapters back. Vista's like a new dude. He's the least hyped of the major commanders, right? If you want to call the major commanders, Marco, Jozu, Ace, then Vista. So Mihawk's fighting Vista, and it's not even like Mihawk's toying with Vista. If you look at it objectively, it never looks like Mihawk is toying with Vista. In fact, Mihawk seems to be giving him respect. He's not joking around or anything, really. It's not like he's treating him like East Blue Zoro or anything like that. And then the fight closes without Mihawk stomping him. Instead, Vista says, "Oh, we each have a point in our favor," implying that Mihawk landed a point on Zoro, or on Mihawk. Sorry, Vista landed a point on Mihawk, and Mihawk landed a point on Vista, so like a respectable sword duel was had, right? Now we understand, again, that Mihawk must have been using, 5% of his strength. It's just other random shit, like Crocodile talking shit to Mihawk. Yeah, Crocodile talks shit to everyone. He talked shit to Blackbeard, or Whitebeard, but it's just like, when you don't have any impressive showings compared to everybody else that's being hyped up in the war, at that point, the only thing that Mihawk was really clinging to was the title World's Strongest Swordsman, which people were calling into question at that point. Like, what does World's Strongest Swordsman even mean? We don't imagine him being able to beat Shanks in a duel, stuff like that. Summarization says, it's cool to hype up Mihawk with the Seraphim Hawk, so when he actually fights Zoro, we know he actually is a strong enough opponent. I hope that Mihawk gets a good scene that's not just that, Like, we shouldn't just have the Seraphim to be the source of how strong Mihawk is, right? Hopefully Mihawk gets to actually, fight an admiral like the Marine Hunter title he has, Mr. Crescent says, S. Whitebeard with Crocodile's Fruit. The thing about the Seraphims is we have to see them in their adult forms to properly gauge them, because what I'm picking up my personal takeaway right now, seeing them in their child forms, is that in their child forms, they're nowhere near the fighting capabilities of their fully developed versions, right? Especially someone like the Mihawk Seraphim that's very reliant on like physical fighting, right? So he's nowhere near his adult form, right? Kuma can at least use the Devil Fruit abilities that the original can, because those are just Devil Fruit abilities. You can just use them, right? But Mihawk, as he is right now, is nowhere near using the full swordsmanship Seraphim Mihawk right now is nowhere near using the full swordsmanship that adult Mihawk can use, right? So it's hard to scale the Seraphim because they don't have the full fighting capabilities yet. They're said to be in development, but then they have the Lunarian bullshit and the Devil Fruit additions and stuff like that. And those are the two main things right now. And laser beams for whatever that's worth, right? So when you're asking S. Whitebeard with Crocodile's Fruit, it's just too hard to say. I made the theory a while ago that I think that the adult versions of Lunarians could eventually be stronger than the original versions, right? So right now it's too hard to say, right? Would a Seraphim Whitebeard be stronger than would the Crocodile's Fruit be stronger than the original? I don't know. Reflexy says, starting a storyline in Science Island, befriend the supernova as we meet there, and kidnap the scientist to save him from a higher force. Familiar. You're saying it's the same as Sabaody? Yeah. Sorry, not Sabota. You know what I mean. Punk Hazard. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely very, very similar. Very, very, very similar. Sampat Takesh Revolprati, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 4 months. Just caught up. Shaka RIP maybe. We did a poll where most people don't think he's dead. Seraphims are invincible till Fire goes out sick. We talked about that. We think that Advanced Conquerors Hockey should still be able to do the trick based on something that was said during the Zoro and King fight, although we have yet to see it in action. Thoughts on S. Boa speaking fluently, unlike the other pacifistas? I don't know if that says any. I think that Mihawk and Kuma are just not particularly talkative characters. I suppose Jinbei kind of isn't either. I don't know what to say. It's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's like a. I don't know if that's an important thing of their characters, or if that's just Oda trying to play a Boa Hancock, like Kid Hancock's cuteness, because to give a reason for why Kid Hancock is able to turn people to stone that isn't pedophilia, I think he has to play up that, oh, she's cute and she acts like a cute kid. So that involves talking, right? That's the that's the only thing I got, man. Remix King says Mihawk is as underrated as Green. Mihawk is as underrated as Green before she got. What was the one Green had? Charmander? I don't know. Charmander. Jameson Hilgendorf says Davy backfight will be over the Straw Hat. No, come on now. That'd be crazy though, because Luffy is supposed to give the Straw Hat back. But I think Kid would be like, the Straw Hat, fuck this shit. I'm out of here. Umair Ula says, for me, it doesn't make sense for Luffy's goal to Shanks to be weaker than Zoro, who is Luffy's right-hand man. Narrative-wise, it doesn't make sense to me. Look, I mean, I've always said this, which is I do think... God damn it. I've always said this, which is I do think that Shanks is stronger than Mihawk. I think it's just everything in terms of the way the story portrays the two. Everything in terms of the way the story portrays the two, how much effort Oda goes into hyping up Shanks, etc. And largely the fact that most of Mihawk's hype comes from being compared to Shanks. That's the main thing that Mihawk people have to go off of. Whereas Shanks has, like, everything else kind of in his favor. But I like Mihawk more as a character. And, all of that, plus role in the narrative being a huge thing, right? Role in the narrative, I think, is just huge. I think that Shanks is, like, Luffy's goal, Shanks being higher than Zoro's goal, Mihawk, it makes sense. So a lot of things, just amount of, general portrayal, like, what it feels like is being built up in the story, etc. Shanks' significance in the story, relative to the two main characters, or, like, the two characters, Luffy and Zoro, things like, there's so many factors. However, I do think that in a straight sword fight, which would involve Haki, by the way, because Haki is involved in sword fights, Mihawk would beat Shanks. My theory has always been that the only way that any of this makes sense is that there are aspects of Conqueror's Haki that we have yet to see, which I definitely think is just fucking true, because we've seen over and over again that the limits of what Haki are, we're still just getting, there's an iceberg to it, right? We're still just slowly learning levels to what Haki can do, right? We didn't know Haki could see the future like 400 chapters ago, right? So there's aspects to Haki that we don't know about, right? We didn't know we did get to see Haki can create giant invisible barriers. We got a hint of that at Marineford, but we never got the explanation for that till, Wano Country, right? There's so much to Haki we don't yet understand, and Kaido's made it clear that Luffy is not, like, he outright said basically that you're not yet at the peak of what Haki can do, meaning to me there are likely aspects of Haki that we have yet to see. Shanks has kind of been established as being very, very, very competent in Haki and very impressive in Haki, even to characters like Whitebeard. So the simple way I reconcile it is that Shanks and Mihawk are probably very, very close in strength. If they're having a straight sword fight, right? Again, involving Haki, I assume that Mihawk would win. I mean, of course he win. That's his title, right? That's his title, and they've had duels in the past, so Mihawk's earned the title. But they're likely, in my opinion, I would assume, aspects to Haki that we have yet to have seen, right? Aspects to Haki that would not be involved in a sword fight And maybe if you include those aspects of Haki in Shanks' repertoire, then maybe that makes him a slightly stronger character than Mihawk overall. But if they're having a sword duel, then Mihawk would win that sword duel. Does that make sense? I think people really don't like it because they're like, well, a lot of people don't like it because they're like, you have to pick one or the other, right? And people don't like the idea that the argument hinges on there being abilities yet to have been discovered. But I just don't understand why that is, because it's like we already tend to scale characters throughout the story based on implied abilities, right? We don't know what Dragon can do, but we can assume that he's very, very strong, right? We don't know what Im can do, but we can assume that it's very, very strong and likely something more than what we've seen from any character in the series. And more importantly than that, we already know that when it comes to Haki, we have not yet seen the full potential of it. We have seen over and over again that what Haki can be is well beyond our normal expectations of what it can do, right? So there's techniques and things like that that we would never expect that it is capable of. And it's been established that Shanks is kind of like the pinnacle of Haki as far as we've been built up to believe in the One Piece world right now. And Kaido's made it clear that even with Luffy having mastered Advanced Conqueror's Haki, he's still not there yet. There's aspects that we haven't learned. So to me, it all just kind of makes sense that there's probably stuff that Shanks can do that goes beyond just coding Advanced Conqueror's Haki on your sword and swinging it around. I assume, because it's basically been established that there's more to Haki than that, and we just haven't seen that yet. I don't know. That's my take on it, but, yeah, people are saying Shanks is a swordsman, Mihawk wins. Yeah, I think he wins in a sword fight. All I'm saying is, if you look at the rest of the series, it seems implied that Shanks is kind of the strongest pirate around right now, which means that, strongest, but loses to Mihawk in a sword fight. That tells me that very likely Shanks can probably do things with Haki that would not be involved in a sword fight that we have yet to see. And it's very, very, very fair to assume that, in my opinion, based on all of the quotes and, revelations we've had about Haki throughout the story, continually showing us over and over that there are secret techniques, there are things that would go beyond what we would normally expect, right? And we have not yet hit the tip of the bottom of the Haki iceberg. Jake Jones, welcome to the Yonko. Vitan Knight says, Shanks has only used a sword in combat. He's a swordsman just like Zoro and Mihawk. He is a swordsman, but he is obviously a swordsman. I'm just saying if there are things that he can't, just because we've only seen him use a sword so far, does not mean that's the only thing he can do. You know how many characters in One Piece we were initially shown can only, the barest glimpses of their ability and then got to see their full ability, and it's something more than that, right? So obviously Shanks would lose to Mihawk in a sword fight. Mihawk is a better swordsman. I don't think it should be that controversial to think that Shanks might be able to do something more than just use his sword. That's all I'm saying. Dreadful Slot says, no one even heard of Mihawk in Wano, the land of swordsmen. Such a disappointment. It's weird. It's just weird because I don't think you can call your... I don't think that Mihawk needed to have been a very significant character in Wano. I would love if Mihawk is able to make a reference or something like that to Wano or something like that, but it's just bizarre that Mihawk has the title of World's Strongest Swordsman without ever having made an impact in there's a land of swordsmen, right? Where it's not like some secret land. This is a legendary island that the world knows about and the world government fears because of the strength of its swordsmen, right? The literal world government is scared to go there because the samurai there are so strong. Now, in actuality, if Mihawk had gone there, would there have been any competition? No. The Scabbards, he would have mopped the floor with them, right? King is the best swordsman that was there, basically, and Mihawk would have mopped the floor with him. But it's just weird that it wasn't... just because we as the reader know that secretly that super strong land of swordsmen, it had been missing its... it hasn't had an Odin or a Ryuma in a while or whatever. It's just weird that Mihawk kind of just takes the title without doing anything, we all know that Mihawk is stronger than anyone in Wano. You could put all the Scabbards together and Mihawk would beat them, in my opinion. But it's just weird, Miguel B says, Mort, stop with the mental gymnastics. You might sprain your mental ankle. I mean, I think what I'm saying is pretty straightforward, right? I don't think that there's much, like, okay. This is the last time I'm going to go over it in 4 points, basically, right? Does the story generally hype up, does Oda generally go out of his way to hype up Shanks more, focus on his sort of screen presence more, have other characters talk about him more, generally give him more impressive moments throughout the story by a long shot? Yes. Does Shanks have a much more significant role, not only in the narrative, but in relation to their counterpart characters? So Shanks is to Luffy, with Mihawk is to Zoro, and Luffy's obviously much more significant and stronger than Zoro. Yes, right? Do these reasons lead you to believe that Shanks is likely being set up to be the stronger character? Yes. Is Mihawk supposed to be stronger than Shanks in a sword fight? Yes, right? What does that mean? That would mean that Shanks would have to have, for Shanks to be a stronger character, but weaker as a swordsman, that would just mean that Shanks would have to have abilities that go outside the spectrum of, or the realm of a sword fight. Have we had enough established about Haki and mysteries established about what we have yet to learn about Haki to believe that this could be the case, that there are abilities, Haki related, that Shanks would have that would make him stronger than Mihawk overall, but that would not be used in a sword fight? I think yes, just because there's a million quotes about it. And that's just the way Haki's worked so far throughout the story. So I don't think it's too many mental gymnastics there, really. I'm just going point by point. I think, to me, what makes sense. How can one character be a better swordsman than the other character, but the other character is still stronger overall? Maybe there's some stuff that's not swordsmanship related that this other character has, and we have a lot of reasons and hints to believe that this is entirely possible that it could be the case. I think yes. Treble Lakeem says, Lafitte equals killer. Can change appearances, uses gun. What? Oh, yeah, no, I talked about this. I don't think, it just feels like it's such a long time coming, though, with the CP0 stuff. It just feels like this has been an ongoing problem, so I would like it not to be the Blackbeard Pirates at this point. Alright, guys, I'm going to call the stream in 5 more minutes. Sampath Sukesh Revolpati says, when I compared Esboa versus Pacifista, I meant the older Pacifista models. It could be because they're clones instead of robots. Oh, yeah, I would agree with that. Free will for S. Doflamingo is still possible. Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen enough of S. Hancock's personality to think that that could be the case. This is me says, why would Oda introduce Shanks only rival to Mihawk if it's just to say that Shanks is not a swordsman and he's stronger, Mr. Morge? I don't think people are getting it. Shanks is a swordsman, and Mihawk is a stronger swordsman. That's pretty much, like, Shanks is a swordsman, Mihawk's a stronger swordsman. If they have a sword duel, including using Haki, yeah, Mihawk should win. Otherwise, the title makes no sense. Are people really not getting what I'm saying? Which is that Shanks could also have abilities that are not swordsmanship related, right? Again, the example I've used in the past is, what if, like, with Haki, you can literally shoot a Haki beam or something like that out of the palm of your hand? That has nothing to do with swordsmanship. You wouldn't use that in a sword duel. But, and that's just a hypothetical, right? I have no idea what extra Haki abilities there could be, but it's been established that there are more Haki abilities that we have yet to see, basically spelled out for us by Kaido, that even now, with Advanced Conqueror's Haki coding, that's not the limit. There's more to it, right? So I don't think people are getting what I'm saying. Mihawk can be a stronger swordsman. Shanks is a swordsman. In a sword duel, Mihawk wins. That's Mihawk's claim to fame. Shanks could have stuff that's not swordsmanship related, but is Haki techniques that are still up his sleeve. Shanks is one sleeve. That makes him a stronger character overall if he were to use the full spectrum of his abilities. But that doesn't make him a better swordsman than Mihawk. That's it. There's nothing more to it. Rafi's saying what you're saying is nothing but headcanon. No, but the thing is that everything with characters that we have... That's such a bad argument, because it's like, it would be headcanon if we had no reason to believe this might be the case. I think everyone and their mother could tell you that, yes, throughout the story, Shanks has definitely been given much more significant portrayal, hype, build-up by characters in the story, and more significant moments than Mihawk, right? Everyone can tell you that Shanks has been set up to have a much more significant role relative to the counterpart character, with Shanks to Luffy, Mihawk to Zoro, right? Now, the big reason... So, we already get the sense that Shanks is set to be very, very strong, arguably probably the strongest in the story right now, as the role of the big good. But the biggest reason it's not headcanon to assume that Shanks might have more Haki abilities is because, one, Shanks has already been built up to be an absolute Haki monster, even by characters like Whitebeard. And two, we've already been told that we have not yet seen the limits of Haki. it's not headcanon because we already know that there's some stuff we haven't seen yet, right? That's like saying that thinking that Dragon is strong just because he's Luffy's dad and the head of the revolutionaries is headcanon. It's like, if you use the word headcanon in the loosest way, it would be headcanon if I said, oh, Shanks definitely has a Kamehameha ability, right? That's headcanon. But to say that, yeah, I think we have good reason to believe based on this, this, and this, that Shanks likely has more abilities than just, like, there's good reason to believe Shanks could have more abilities than just swordsmanship. That's not what headcanon is. That's just looking at what the story's telling you. Like, what the story is literally saying is possible. Samput Sakesh Revolpati says, basically Shanks bodies Mihawk after he cheats. I don't know how their fights go or whatever, but, I think we're going in circles at this point. I think you guys get it. Gigatronma says, Mihawk was a warlord. He was governed by the world government. They weren't going to let him go to Wano and start a war with Kaido. I think Mihawk could do whatever the fuck he wanted to do. Like, I don't think that the world government could tell Mihawk, hey, you're not allowed to go to Wano. I think the only thing the world government asked of him, because literally, the world government couldn't even tell him to stay and fight Shanks. He was like, I don't want to fight Shanks. I'm leaving, right? They told him that he had to go fight Whitebeard. He barely tried fighting Whitebeard. Like, I don't think... Mihawk just has to do enough to not lose his warlord potential, which probably involves basically, okay, hunt pirates and don't hunt us, and we're probably good. But beyond that, they can't tell him to do anything. Especially because going to Wano and starting a war with Kaido, isn't that kind of what he's supposed to do a little bit? If you're really a pirate hunter, wouldn't they love to see Mihawk go in and just take Kaido out? I don't know. Joy says you could explain it like 20 more times and the Sword Swallower still wouldn't get it. Yeah, you're right. I should move along. I'm trying to move along, but everything in chat is literally about Shanks and Mihawk. This is this is hard. I need a topic switch. Well, I was gonna call stream anyway. Okay, Sanji's eyebrows was like the last thing. Okay. The eyebrows thing, there's not that much to say on it other than I think it's cool that Sanji got a moment where he looked good. This was a very, very, very rare chapter where it's in a moment where Luffy and Zoro were not made to look so good. I think we all had the reaction of, wait, come on, they're not damaging the Seraphims. And then in that same chapter, Sanji, like a badass, is coming in and taking on a Seraphim, like knocking out a Seraphim, not knocking out, but kicking away a Seraphim 1v1 and being made to look cool while doing it. And basically saying, like, this guy's mine, I'm going to take him. And we get the clear indication that he's in his power-up mode with the eyebrow thing. I think this was all made for a good chapter for Sanji, right? Now, this is not about technicalities, because people are going to come in and be like, Luffy and Zoro could beat those Seraphims 1v1 if they were trying. They weren't using Advanced Conqueror's Haki, etc., blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how the chapter feels, right? So if you're a Luffy-Zoro fan, right, this chapter kind of starts off with, like, huh? They couldn't even do this? Are we fucking kidding around right now? Like, this is Luffy's a Yonko. Zoro just beat King. Shouldn't they be able to do this, right? You've got two people backing you up and stuff. This is ridiculous. And then you get to the later point in the chapter and at least make Sanji look cool, right? It's more about how the flow of the chapter feels if you're a fan of each of these characters, right? So this must have been a fun chapter, if you're really looking for a Sanji moment or have been waiting on a Sanji moment for a bit. The bigger thing that I liked about the eyebrows is that I did feel like I was unsure. I think we all assumed that Sanji's upgrade... I assumed that Sanji's upgrades that he got were permanent and that he just had them on. I didn't realize that his eyebrow would be switching to indicate that every time he turns that on. I thought the most that we would get as an indication that Sanji is using power-up mode and stuff like that is when he pulls out Ifrit Jambe. That's what I believed. So... this is good just because I think it just always feels better when you can definitely see progression and are made to feel that a character has definitely moved forward and gained a new ability rather than it just being assumed, right? So I could have gone forward, if Oda didn't want to do the Sanji eyebrow flip every time, and he just, said like Sanji has Germa exoskeleton abilities at this point, just keep that in mind. it would probably feel like I'm seeing the same stuff out of Sanji. It's just that now in the back of my mind, I have to know, oh, he's using an exoskeleton, right? It's not like Zoro's Ashura where we get to see a power up, or even just Advanced Conqueror's Haki where you can see that sparks are flying and the blade isn't touching whatever is being attacked and stuff like that, right? So Sanji's power up would just be implied. I like the fact that we now get to know when we're seeing the old Sanji, right, versus the new Sanji, because we saw Sanji kick this Jinbei Seraphim once earlier this arc, and I think most people are like, yeah, this was fine. This was passable, right? Sanji didn't look bad. He didn't stomp the Jinbei Seraphim, but, you know, it was a brief encounter or whatever. This was fine. Sanji kicked him away. Now, we're kind of circling back to that same scenario, but it's Sanji in factually tryhard mode, and we get to realize that now, like, when he kicked him that first time, he wasn't even using the abilities upgrades that he got in Wano, right? Now he's using the ability upgrades that he got in Wano, so now it's going to be a little more impressive. So, yeah, I like the fact that it's a mode, basically. I think just in general, showing the reader, this was always something, you know, this was something that didn't, this was something big. I don't know if you guys have read Fairy Tail at all, but I have, okay? This was something that definitely really bothered me. It bothered me with Fairy Tail, which was, there was a point, it's hard to explain, there was a time skip. I don't care about spoiling you guys on Fairy Tail. But this was something that really bothered me, which was there was a point where there was a time skip, right? They actually get teleported forward in time, and they find out that everyone has gotten stronger in the meantime. And then they're told that, like, in the time that they missed, there was some magic bullshit power-up that all mages were able to access or something like that will automatically make you stronger and scale you up or something. I forget the exact explanation, but then they just do that automatic power-up, and it's basically assumed that all the Fairy Tail protagonists are now stronger. They're all caught up to whatever the current strength level is. And it's not like a new mode or anything like that. It's kind of just like, I might be misremembering this, but basically, point being, I think in general, anytime characters get stronger, right, if they're given a power-up, I would like that power-up to be visible, right, so that you can understand when it's being used and you can kind of feel the difference between what they were doing before versus where they're at now. Sampatsakesh Revolpathy says, will Seraphim still be relevant in the final war? Yeah, I mean, I said so initially. I thought that they were definitely being set up as Im's final line of fighters, and I think it would be a damn shame with the way they're being hyped up now if we never get to see their adult forms and if they're defeated here. So I like to think that they're being hyped up a lot here because they will be relevant in the final war. But at the end of the day, maybe they're just set to be defeated here in Egghead Island. But I'm just like, man, but then why are we not getting to see their final forms, you know? Infamous says it's still debatable whether the exoskeleton is passive, because apparently when Stussy was touching Sanji's cheek, it made a clink sound. That's supposed to be the sound of touching metal. So then what's the eyebrow flipping? You know, what's the eyebrow flipping? It's definitely a new mode that he's going into, right? Baby Mort says Spriggan 12 could have been one of the best villain groups ever, The Pain. I was so hyped for that group initially. And now, by the end, I thought they were so fucking lame. Alright, guys. I'm going to do 2 more questions, then I'm going to call the stream. I also like the little personality change that it gives Sanji, just because I think he's been made to look like it feels like Oda takes him out of that bitch phase for a while, and then he just goes back to being a bitch. Like Oda just goes back to writing him like that for a bit, and I'm just like, it's not funny, it's played out, and it just gets worse and worse, right? So I like that now we get a moment where it's not just, oh, we get to see a bit of the old Sanji or something like that. We get to see him literally go into a mode where he's the badass version of himself, right? I like that a lot. Let's see if it sticks. Let's see if it's a momentary thing, or let's see if it sticks. I don't know. Let's see. Deadass says, like, when he switches eyebrows, he becomes more cold-blooded like his brothers. Yeah, and I know that that's supposed to be a bad thing and all that, but at the same time, it's kind of like, We don't need heart eyes drooling Sanji all the time if that's what emotional means, right? I think a lot of Sanji's coolest moments were also when he was really cold, really, just shows up, really coldly dispatches Jaibura with some badass line like, food was too spicy for like devil spice, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like when Sanji's his cold, collected, calm self, basically kicking ass, basically. The Sanji that's smoking a cigarette with his hand in his pocket while he like is just kicking somebody's ass at the same time. I don't know. Oh, Wade Turner with a great question. We'll wrap the stream here. How far have you gotten in Dark Souls? I beat Dark Souls last Friday. Including the DLC. Great game. I think it's so. The game I felt like it's such a good game. But it's definitely got these two glaring the second half, the Lord Vessel section is just straight up bad. Like it's genuinely bad. Like I'd say the New Londo Ruins is good. Then after that, the Duke's Archives / Crystal Caves is like really mediocre. And then Lost Izalith and Demon Ruins is just bad. And then Catacombs and the Tomb of the Giants is just terrible. So my opinion of Dark Souls went from like, it was really high, then I was struggling in Blighttown and stuff, then Anor Londo, I was like, this game is fucking amazing, I love it so much. It's so good. This is God's gift to man. Then I went New Londo Ruins, I was like, still good. Then Duke's Archives and Crystal Caves, I was like, okay, this is the first time I feel like a lack of thought in this game, which I think is just such a brilliant game. Like, but this is the first time I'm feeling like, it's a mediocre area. Like, I don't know, this is just not as thought out. And then Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith, I was just like, this is fucking awful. Who the fuck made, like, this is worse than anything else I've ever played. Granted, I haven't played any, like, a ton of games and stuff like that, but there's no, like, I've played all the Zelda games, and they would never put together a level as trashly designed as this. And then Tomb of the Giants, I'm just like, are they fucking serious? But then I played the DLC, and the DLC was so good. And then I played the ending part of it with Gwyn and the killing and stuff, and that was a beautiful ending. Maybe not the ending, but beautiful way to end the section. So my overall opinion, great game. I'm so happy I played it. I do want to play more of the games in that genre. At the end of the day, I think, I don't know. At the end of the day, I feel like there was a good period of time I was like, I think I like this more than Sekiro, because even though I love Sekiro's combat and actual gameplay and all of that stuff so much, I feel like Dark Souls just offers more with the world, the lore, the exploration, the puzzles, the even the build stuff. I kind of started liking like leveling up my stats and stuff like that. Even that, there's just more interesting stuff to it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, Sekiro feels like almost a perfectly polished game from start to finish. Like, so much fun, from never really missed a beat. Such high level from start to finish, whereas Dark Souls was like high highs but then extremely low lows. And granted, the highs were really, really, really the majority of the game, but the lows were just so absurd. And then lastly, I'll say that the DLC really changed my mind a lot, because partway through Lost Izalith, I was just like, let me just fucking get through this. And then Tomb of the Giants is just like, this is just bad. Like, this is just bad, man. Like, this is just a bad, like, it sullies so much of how I viewed the rest of the game. But the DLC really saved it, because I ended on such a high note. So it makes me feel more like really great game with some glaring stuff that I think is just bad. And then overall, though, clearly a really, really special experience for me. I don't know. I want to play Dark Souls 3 next. That's where I'm at. I'm going to skip Dark Souls 2, because I've heard it's really bad. Yeah, I've only played Sekiro and Dark Souls out of FromSoft games. And before that, the only single-player games I played were the Zelda games. So that's pretty much it. So that's all I have to compare it to. I did play Super Mario Galaxy. I forgot about that one. I did play Super Mario Galaxy. When I was a kid, I played Shrek 2. I don't even count that, though, because it's Shrek 2. Yeah, so that's pretty much the total. Dark Souls, the last thing I'll say is that it is easier than Sekiro. I had it wrong. Initially, I was like, Dark Souls is harder than Sekiro. I think I was talking about that a lot initially. Sekiro stays hard from start to finish. And I realized that the Dark Souls bosses after a bit are not difficult. They're not difficult after a bit. I had a lot of trouble with the Bell Gargoyles, so I assumed that the rest of the game would be really difficult because I just wasn't used to the style of play yet. I was just doing all the wrong things and stuff. So once I understood the style of play, everything became a lot easier. So like a lot easier. The only difficult boss, as in like a boss that took me like a while, was Ornstein and Smough. Those took me like, I think like at least, those probably took me like a dozen tries or something. Like those were hard. I was stuck on them for like an hour, right? But then the crazy thing is that with Sekiro, I think like the easiest Sekiro boss, the easiest Sekiro bosses probably took me the same amount of time. No, I'm not counting folding screen monkeys and divine dragon and gimmick fights and stuff. But the easier Sekiro bosses like Gyobu, even that took me about the same amount of time as the hardest, like an Ornstein and Smough or Manus, basically from like Manus and Ornstein and Smough were the only bosses that took me like double-digit tries basically. And then like for most of the end section of the game, I was pretty much coasting. Like Seath took like one try. I'm trying to think. Like most stuff took like one or two tries basically past a certain point. Nito took maybe like 5 tries for me. Four Kings took like a handful of tries, but like, yeah, Ornstein and Smough and Manus were the only ones that took like a bunch of tries, like 10 plus. And I think Bell Gargoyles because those were the first ones and I couldn't really get it, you know. But I've heard that Dark Souls 3 has much harder bosses. But that's the thing. Okay, so the main thing is that you can't compare boss to boss because Sekiro's difficulty is mainly just as bosses and mini bosses, right? So it's bosses and mini bosses are designed to take a lot of tries. Dark Souls difficulty was not so much in the bosses. It's in like, you can get lost. You can you really don't know what to do. Getting through areas are much more difficult. But I'll just say that as I got better at understanding the game and just what to look out for, that adjusted for me over the course of Dark Souls so that the second half of Dark Souls I didn't feel was as hard in terms of understanding areas or what to look out for or how to like really like retrace steps and stuff like that when needed to just make sure I didn't miss anything or like miss a bonfire and stuff like that. Because Blighttown, I was missing bonfires. I had to look up where bonfires were for Blighttown and stuff. I didn't really have to do that for the rest of the game. So yeah, I think Dark Souls you understand more as you go. So you understand how to approach the game and like where it's gonna try and get you and how to think about your exploration and stuff as you go. Sekiro it's just a curve. So I feel like it stays. You keep getting better at the game, but the difficulty keeps raising, so it keeps lining up perfectly as you go. So, Anyway. Jose Lario says Sekiro trained me for Dark Souls. That's what Sekiro definitely trained my my willingness to my mental fortitude, I suppose, to die over and over. But Dark Souls, there were 2 times. Sekiro, at least, whenever I've hit like a wall, I was like, this is just a really difficult fight or something. But Dark Souls, the couple of times that I felt like, there were 2 times that I was kind of just like, why am I playing that? Like, this game is no longer fun for me in this moment. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it just to do it? Let me quit. That happened once in Blighttown and once in Anor Londo. In Anor Londo was because there's this area, which I found out since is like very infamous, which is like, you have to beat these imp things and then run past these archers, which I've since found out is very infamous. I considered quitting at Blighttown because I couldn't find the bonfires, so I thought you had to do the whole thing each time. So I had to look up the bonfires. And then I considered quitting during the archers thing. I just took a break for a bit and came back and was able to do it. Those times I was considering quitting just because when you're having trouble in Dark Souls, you're just not having fun at all. When you're losing a lot in Sekiro, it can feel really demoralizing, but it's still like an adrenaline-based challenge at the end of the day, so getting back into it and doing it over and over again doesn't feel quite as painful. Versus Anor Londo, I'm just like, you have to do this. It's a very slow process, right? You have to fight this enemy once, then this enemy, then this enemy. Okay, I've cleared everything. Now this one, and then this one. Okay, cleared that. Now let me try doing this run up this bridge and dodge this arrow, and fuck, I missed this parry against the knights, and I'm falling and I'm dead, and I don't want to spend 10 minutes doing this whole thing again. That's it. Alright, guys. Enough. Enough. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any supers and all of that. But, yeah. Oh, wait, I think I missed one. Nope. Nope. Alright, I don't think I missed any. Bloodborne I unfortunately can't try because I don't have a PlayStation. I have to play on PC. Okay, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the tail end of the stream, which is, not One Piece related, but, that's just the way, the way it is. Alright, guys. I will talk to y'all later.